Hi, folks. Steve Urban here, founder and CEO at recruiting and consulting firm Riderflex. If you think today's tip or guest interview can help someone you know, please share this with them. And if you enjoy listening to our show, please subscribe to our channel and hit the like button on the episodes. Finally, aside from our podcast, our day job here at Riderflex is to provide recruiting, staffing, and consulting services. You can visit riderflex.com to learn more about us and get the information on the services we provide. And now, a quick word from our sponsor and friends at Marketing 360.
Try the #1 marketing platform for small business. Everything you need from design to marketing to CRM. Learn more at marketing360.com. Marketing 360. Fuel your brand.
What do you think about life in our mid-50s? How's it been for you? It's weird as we go through these stages, isn't it? Like health-wise, physically. How's your 50s so far?
So far, it's been great. I have younger kids for most mid-50-year-olds. So I have a 17-year-old and a 13-year-old about to turn 14. So it keeps us young and active. And, it's definitely physically you start feeling the aches and pains and not being not so flexible and so forth. So you just have to work at it and keep fit as much as you can.
So you got two teenagers at home. Yeah, that 17 and 14. Yeah, that'll keep you busy. But boys, girls, one of each. What do you got?
One of each. So my 17-year-old daughter is a junior in high school, and my son is in 8th grade.
Anything exciting yet? Like any calls from the sheriff's office? Like 2 a.m. knocks on the door. Anything good? Anything fun?
Knock on wood. They're both amazing kids. I have no complaints. They're really good kids.
Good for you. Teenagers usually sometimes they can be tough. It depends. Of course, your 8th grader just getting started. He might.
Yeah. He's a good kid though. He's a sweet boy. Basketball is his passion. He's a great student, works at it really hard. And, we're very blessed.
Well, I guess he knows you got your master's at North Carolina, right? So, I mean, yes. You're probably a basketball family kind of a little bit, I'm guessing.
We've become a basketball family. We've always been a college football family. My wife and I both went to Clemson.
I saw that. I saw you in Clemson. Also, that's where you met your wife?
Yes.
What was this? Were you at like a frat party or something? You saw her across the room. You're like, oh, how'd that happen?
We actually were just friends. We were friends in the same big friend group. And then about how many years later, probably about 20 some years later, we reconnected. We were both in New York City, and then the rest is history. So we didn't date in college, but we started dating once we reconnected.
Interesting. Were either one of you married before?
No,
and no kids. 20 years later. So you're 20 years later. Hell, you graduated college 21. You were like 40 when you got married.
I was 39.
Wow. All right. Well, that's why you got teenagers in your mid 50s, right? There you go.
Exactly. Yeah.
You're right about the physical part. For me, it's the physical that I notice the most, like mentally and all that.
I'm sorry.
That's all right. It's all right. We get dogs visiting here on the Riderflex show. They want to speak up and want to tell us what's going on. They gotta let us know when somebody's at the door.
That was not expected. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Good. Hey, good thing you weren't in shorts, right? Have you seen that video of the guy that's in the suit top and he stands up? He's good. By the way, if you called me, most of the time I'm in a Riderflex shirt, but most of the time I'm in shorts, sweatpants, whatever.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so you met your wife like 20 years later. Wow, that's a pretty cool story. But I want to know real quick your parents growing up. Did you have siblings, and what'd your mom and dad do? I want to know some early stuff there.
Yes, so I'm the youngest of 4, and we're all very close in age. A very close family. My parents, we grew up in Cincinnati, Ohio.
Oh.
My father is originally from West Virginia, was the first of his generation in the family to go to college at Michigan State. And
Nice.
he met my mother in Michigan, and they got married after before he started college. They were married and started a family, and then he worked his way through college and got a degree. And then after that, he took a job with Ford Motor Company, which moved him to Ohio. And he worked there for, I don't know, 30, 35 years and retired about 20 years ago, something like that. And they're both still in Ohio doing well. And
Are they? Okay.
my sisters and their families are in Ohio, and my brother splits his time between Delaware and South Carolina.
Any family left in West Virginia or no?
Yes, cousins and aunts and uncles and so forth on my father's side. Yes.
Okay.
My father is first generation Mexican American.
Ah, okay. All right. Very good. Do you speak any Spanish?
I try.
So when you went to college, why'd you go to Clemson? How did that happen?
I went to Clemson. My brother was a Duke at the time.
Oh,
and
wow.
Yes, and his best friend and a family friends of ours was at Clemson, and I knew I was going into engineering, so I was looking at different colleges: Purdue, Michigan, Ohio State, and Clemson. And I went down to visit my brother's family friend for a football game weekend, and after that, there was no choice. So as soon as my father used to always come home for lunch, and he retrieved the mail one day, and it was from Clemson, and he came to the high school to get me out of class so that he could share the letter with me.
Is that right? That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. I mean, that's a great story. Your dad coming from West Virginia, he's the first guy to go to school, and then he sends one son to Duke, one son to Clemson. How about the other two siblings? They both went to college too?
They did. My oldest sister went to Bowling Green in Ohio, and my sister, that's 1 year older than me, went to University of Kentucky.
Wow, your parents must be super proud, right? And they're still alive and still doing good.
Doing well. Parents are are very proud. I'm proud of them as well. My dad is my idol. He came from nothing and just made it, and his goal was to make sure he sent us all through college. So he reached that.
That is pretty cool story. Okay, so you go to Clemson. What were you going to be an engineer? Did you know what you wanted to do? Talk to me about that.
Well, I knew that the engineering curriculum was one that I could do. I was very good in math and science and so forth. And I had enough insight from my brother. He also was in engineering, that it really was a good foundation, a good degree to have to really go anywhere with. So no, I didn't really have aspiration to being a nuts and bolts engineer, but I did enjoy the curriculum. I liked the learning, and I knew that I wanted to be in technology.
You knew you wanted to be in tech. And early on, and here's something good for the listeners, especially for the younger listeners and aspiring entrepreneurs, you were heavily involved, right? In college, you were in activities, you were in student government, you were this. I mean, you were in leadership / groups and organizations way early on, which I have found, being a recruiter for a living, because that's what we do in our day job as a recruiting firm at Riderflex. Anytime I see people that were super heavily involved like that in organizations, at a young age in college, they usually go on to be in some sort of leadership role later on. It serves them really well. You learn a lot of people skills, a lot of different things during that time.
Yeah.
I saw you. Okay. So you get out of school, and then what happens? You get your first job with DuPont, not DuPont. Who'd you go to work for?
DuPont. So I actually started with DuPont as a student in a co-op program at Clemson. So I worked for them for a total of about 1.5 years, but 4 different semesters I worked for DuPont. And it was pretty much understood that I would take a job with them after graduation, which I did.
Of course. And, they're like, hey man, we're investing in you. You need to.
And what a great company it was. And still, I'm sure it still is today, but it was such a nurturing environment. People really took care of me, and they recruited me into a management training program at headquarters in Delaware, where I spent spent 4.5 years after finishing college. and I worked in 3 different positions. The first position was in technology, so I was in the design group for new manufacturing plants, which was the worst job in the world because I had no interest in that. But but it was just, I knew that it was a 2-year assignment, and I knew the next assignment would be something a little bit more down the line of what I was aspiring to get into, and that was more on the business side.
Okay.
So I really, I think that the most impactful position that I was given at DuPont was that second job, and that was as a corporate recruiter. So
you know my life. You know my life. You know my daily routine.
Yes. So I was the guy I was the guy on campus that would interview the engineering students for 2 recruiting years, and what a fantastic experience! It got me back to campus. I was around young people, learning about their aspirations, helping placing the top candidates in different businesses in DuPont. And it was a great networking job for me within DuPont. Got to know a lot of the different managers of the different businesses. And it really was the inspiration for going back to school to get my MBA.
Oh, really? That's okay. Because I saw that little gap there. You had a little gap, and then you went back to get your MBA. Okay. All right.
Yes.
All right. That's interesting. See, you go back, you're on campus, you're around the students, you're there doing recruiting. You're like, man, I want to go back. Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. I wondered how that happened. Okay. Very good.
Yeah.
All right. And then what happens? GE recruits you away, or what happened?
Yeah. So when I was in graduate school, first, I was assigned to Conoco for the summer internship, and Conoco at that time was owned by DuPont. So they placed me in London, believe it or not, of all places, which was, again, one of the most amazing experiences I've ever had to leave the country. Yes. And then my second year of graduate school, I spent most of that year in Belgium at a university called Leuven.
Great experience.
Mm-hmm. Came back and graduated. And I actually did take a job with DuPont again in Boston. And soon thereafter, several months after that, I was recruited by an executive recruiter for a position with GE Plastics in California. And it was a job that I couldn't turn down. And even my management and my mentors at DuPont I had been with DuPont this entire time, and they were just so good to me. And it was probably one of the hardest discussions I had to have was when I told them I was leaving. But my management and my mentors looked at me and said, "We're disappointed, but if I were in your shoes, I would do exactly the same thing you're doing."
You're probably still connected to some of those guys today, right? Probably.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That's so important for the listeners. Really, just you get these relationships, you build these things over time. It's very important to water and nurture them and keep them. You never know when you might need to call that phone number for something.
And early on in anyone's career, you're not going to love every job that you're given. And you have to really just embrace it, learn everything you can from it, meet the people, establish a network, work hard. And then that sets you up for really honing down what you really want to do and being able to put yourself in the position to get those jobs that you really want to.
Great advice. I would add to that you're also not going to love every boss that you have along the way either. They're not all going to be super wonderful, but usually there's little nuggets that you can learn from each one, right? Even the ones you don't necessarily like, there's 2 or 3 nuggets that you take away from, like, okay, this person's good at that, good at this. And you you grab the little nuggets as you move along, you put them in your basket, and I would also advise listeners, if you do get an asshole boss along the way, it's probably not a good idea to blow up the bridge, because you never know, that person
never burn a bridge.
No, never. Just don't do it. I did it a few times when I was in my 20s, until because I was super cocky and but
that's one of the key pieces of advice I do give young people is that, a person or a company or someone that you have perhaps some conflict with or something, you have to understand that person could be your future customer, could be your future neighbor, could be your future employer, could be your, you never know who that person knows.
That's right.
And so you have to sort of navigate through that and make the best of it and stay positive.
Great advice, David. Let me just add a quick story in for that before we get into your VC stuff. As a recruiting firm here at Riderflex, we're always working to land additional contracts. We had spent about a month working on this company. I won't mention the company, getting to know some people, and we were doing presentations. We were trying to land some long-term recruiting with them. Well, we finally made it up to the executive team where we had to meet the executives and kind of do our final pitch to get them to sign off on us. And they walk in, there's 3 of them. And one of the guys that walks in is somebody that I knew from my past that I had not done a very good job with. And he saw me and I saw him. I looked over at my co-founder and I said, this meeting's over. We might as well just go now because we're not going to get this gig. So yeah, you're totally right. You never know. Okay. So moving along, did you have aspirations to be a founder or a startup guy or a VC, or how did it happen when you moved the transition into supply base? Kind of walk me through that. Go ahead.
Yes. So GE again was an amazing experience. I had great management. In fact, Jeff Immelt, who was just now the former CEO, was ahead of GE Plastics at that time. And I think my boss, I was 2 or 3 levels below him. Great person, amazing manager. And I did very well in that position. I think part of it was seeing the corporate ladder that was really great. There were fantastic opportunities within GE, but from a personality standpoint, I was more interested in, at that point in my career, doing something really that I was passionate about or interested in.
Okay.
And also I was in Silicon Valley in San Francisco. So there's something in the air out there.
Yes.
And after 3.5 years in a commercial position at GE, myself and 2 other colleagues who worked there as well started brainstorming on a weekly basis about ideas, things that we might want to venture out and do. And then we came up with the idea for Supply Base, and I was the first one to leave. I was like, I'm leaving, I'm going. So we staged it where I left first, and then a few months later, the other co-founder left, and then a few months after that, the other co-founder left.
You guys, you 3 bootstrapped it together?
We put some initial capital in, we bootstrapped it, we raised a small amount of capital from friends and family. And we suffered through that bootstrapping for over 2 years. It was very hard.
I'm guessing you weren't taking a salary those 2 years. I'm guessing.
No.
Yeah.
I spent every dime, every savings I had. My credit cards were maxed, everything. But we stuck through it. And when we got our first round of venture funding, we had brought in a 4th partner, and he was really instrumental in helping us get to that point. It was hallelujah. And I tell you what, I paid off those credit cards before I think I ate dinner. And after that, we raised another round of funding, and then the company was acquired. So our hard work and dedication and pain really paid off.
Successful exit, made some money on the deal. Okay.
We did. We did. We did. We had a very successful exit. We were, the company that acquired us acquired another public company at the same time that they acquired us. We were like, it was a big announcement for the other company being acquired. And then the last part of the release was, oh, by the way, we also acquired Supply Base. But it was a merger at that time. And but for us, it was more than we ever expected to get out of that experience. And it really set us up, when you have some capital, it's money, but it gives you freedom to really then do what you want to do next. And that's really the value that it brought to us. And I look at it, with no regrets, of course, and just a fantastic learning experience.
So that money is what you use to enter into being to enter into the VC world yourself, basically.
Yeah, in essence. So at that point, after we were acquired, I had some colleagues from graduate school who had started a venture capital fund in the East Coast. And based out of Philadelphia. They had opened offices in DC and London, and they were looking for somebody to be on the ground in New York. And I also was, after 7 years in California, I was ready to come back east.
Really?
Yeah, I was. Closer to family, to re-engage with most of my friends historically, are East Coast based because that's where I grew up and so forth. So I was actually serendipitously looking to relocate to New York City for the job that I was in with the acquired company, and I got this call from my classmate Kathy, and she presented the opportunity to me, and I said, okay, when do I meet with you all? So in New York and met, and it was the right thing to do. When you're a very small company and you get swallowed up by a big public company, it's really, you don't really know what the opportunities are going to be. And nothing against that at all. The I2 Technologies who acquired us, they were an amazing organization. This was just an opportunity also that enabled me to step over to the investor side.
Yeah. And which firm was that?
It was called Katalyst with a K, Katalyst Venture Partners. And they had launched the fund in 2000 when I joined shortly thereafter. And they were investing mainly in media technologies, which was a new sector for me. So, I had a lot of learning to do, and it was a great learning experience to be on the investor side. And we had a nice couple of years of operation. What happened after 9/11 was that the VC world pretty much shut down in New York. So they reorganized a bit. They actually sent me over to London for a year in 2002. Yes. And we had some investments and some advisory clients in London. So I went over to manage those.
Now, let me ask you, I want to ask you right there now, did you meet your then wife when you were in New York before you went to London? And did you guys get together when you came back from London? I'm just curious what the timeline is there.
Before.
Okay. So then the time you're building a relationship with her, you're like, hey, I got to go to London, right?
Yeah, she had just moved to New York, and I was in process of going to London. I was back and forth, and then when I came back is really when we started when we got together.
That's almost a scene out of the Christmas movie Family Man, where he's going to the airport to go, and she's like, "Don't go if you go." But it worked out. She didn't go with you, but it worked out.
No, she did not. She was. It worked out well. It worked out really great, and she loved being in New York, and we got married and stayed in New York for 10 years.
Okay, cool. You came back, and then how did you end up moving? You moved on to something else, a couple of other things, maybe before Good Growth, I think.
Yes. So after Katalyst, I went out on my own and did a lot of advisory consulting work with startups. Right. I helped a few people who had funding start their businesses. I did angel investing myself. And then when the plans were to move back to South Carolina, where a lot of our family and my wife's family was.
Your wife's family's from there. Okay.
Yes. And we also had, we purchased a second home in Charleston. During that period. So we were back and forth and getting to know the city well, and it was the right place for us to go to. So we relocated to Charleston, and it was an open slate for me because I had I was on my own doing freelance work, and I really my goal was to establish a venture capital ecosystem here in Charleston.
Oh, okay. What was your wife doing at the time?
My wife has always worked with her family business. Oh, they have commercial real estate properties and manage those. So she's always been involved.
Okay.
In that.
All right. So then what happens? You meet the folks at Good Growth. Did you know them from your past, or how'd you meet them?
Yeah. So what happened then, when I moved to Charleston, I actually started my first fund called Capital A Partners. We call it Cap A. And my partner in that firm was in New York. So and Tanya Marvin Horowitz, and Tanya and I started Cap A. We raised a small fund just to get started. And while we were raising that fund, Tanya and her husband moved to Stockholm.
That's why
And,
sweet. That's why it says Stockholm on your. I got it.
yes,
All right.
correct. So we sort of had to pivot our plan, which actually turned out to be an amazing thing. We started investing in early stage companies here in the Southeast, but also in the Nordics. And after we deployed that fund, we were making plans to raise our, another fund.
Okay.
And she and I were offered a position with a Nordic-based VC fund that saw us, that really wanted to have somebody. They were in Finland. They wanted to have more exposure outside of just Finland. And so they brought us on into that fund. And at that time, I really was at a position, in a situation where I felt that, am I going to really be that valuable to a Nordic-based fund that's only going to be investing in the Nordics?
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, probably not, but let's just go with this and see how it goes. And then at that time, the two co-founders of Good Growth Capital approached me.
Did you know them from your past?
I knew one of the founders, yes, because she was here in Charleston. We were both parents at my daughter's school, and I had got to know Amy. So I knew her for a few years.
All right.
Yes. And Amy approached me and said she was putting a team together, and she knew that I was one of the few people with venture capital experience in South Carolina. And it was the right transition. So what happened was my former partner, Tanya, stayed with Butterfly Ventures, who she's still with today, doing a fantastic work there, doing fantastic investing in the Nordics. And I joined Good Growth. So that was in 2017. And yes, and so they assembled a really great team. The two co-founders, Amy and Maureen, had worked together for 20 years. Amy was here now in Charleston. She had moved from the Northeast down here. Maureen, who is still in Boston, was based in Boston. And then they brought in also John Osborne, who's one of my partners here. John was also very instrumental in getting the ecosystem developed here in Charleston. He started the accelerator called the Harbor Entrepreneurship Center that is still in operation, one of the oldest standing accelerator and entrepreneurship programs in the Southeast. And we brought in a fifth partner, Carolyn Lasala, who was a former executive at Apple Computer, and she had also relocated to Charleston. So this was a dream team that was being put together.
Very nice.
I joined forces with them, and now here we are 5-6 years later, and we are about to close on one of the largest very early stage VC funds in the Southeast.
Very nice. And by the way, for the listeners, goodgrowthvc.com, right? Goodgrowthvc.com.
Goodgrowthvc.com. Yes.
And the portfolio of companies you've invested in is on there. I looked through them this morning. Yeah, impressive. What is your functional role to decide what to invest in, or to raise the capital, or both? I'm just curious.
Well, all of us do all of that, but we do have silos that we do sort of oversee. From the beginning, because I had gone through the legal and financial formation of the fund before, I was brought in to really, I managed that part of the business. So I did all the legal work, and with a law firm, but legal and financial work to manage the formation and operation of the fund. So more like fund administration. But of course, I had to do, we all source deals. We all serve on boards. We do due diligence. We fundraise, etc. But that was my main role in the beginning. And now that we've scaled, we've passed over those responsibilities to a fund administration firm that we outsource to, which has been a godsend. Yes. So now I'm able to do the work that I really enjoy, and that is working with entrepreneurs more closely, digging into technologies and investing.
So if you had to rank your passion, you enjoy talking to the founders of a startup company and helping them get organized and going more than you enjoy asking a billionaire to write a check.
I tell you what, fundraising it takes a unique animal to enjoy it. It's the must do as a venture capitalist, but it is rewarding. I mean, we have assembled an amazing group of investors into our fund from across the United States, several in Asia, several in Europe. It ranges from individuals to family offices to institutions to university endowments,
Nice.
foundations, corporates. It's been a really fantastic experience. As hard as it is, it's been a really amazing experience.
I know from my own experience and from my own advisory board members and equity holders here at Riderflex that dealing sometimes with family offices can be interesting.
It's been enlightening. The actually family offices are, especially nowadays, very, very active in technology investing, especially in the areas that we focus on. And they're very most of them are very involved, and they like to also co-invest alongside us, which is something we encourage.
Okay.
And we've had really good relationships so far with those that have invested in us, and we have built a really great team.
Did I see something on the LinkedIn profile page about an 8% return on average or something? Where did I see that? Did I see that somewhere or no?
For venture capital?
Well, for your fund in general or your performance?
Well,
or something? Did I see something like that? Maybe I didn't. I don't know.
Our first fund is tracking at over a 50% IRR at the moment.
What?
Yes, it's insane. And we've also returned a lot of capital already, just in a short period of 3 years from that first fund to our LPs. Our portfolio is blowing our minds. I mean, these entrepreneurs that we've invested in have just not, for the most part, knocked it out of the park. And we're very proud of every one of them. We support them, continue to reinvest, and we're thrilled. Of course, there's been a couple that have not succeeded, which is always going to happen, and there'll be more. But we right now have 3 unicorns in our portfolio, which isn't necessarily the thing to measure yourself on, but
that's good.
It's certainly some measurement. And we're starting now to look at some significant exits.
Very good. You're continuing to look at companies, right? So anybody that's listening to this show and they have a startup, what's your what's the word I'm looking for? What's your parameters for investing? Do they need to be at a certain revenue, at a certain profit? I guess the 2-part question: how do they qualify for you to even consider them? And then how do they make contact with you to do the pitch?
Right. So we're an early stage investor, and early stage means a lot of things to many people, but for us, we invest all the way from pre-seed, and pre-seed is really the earliest capital in, friends and family round level, all the way up to Series A. That's when we'll enter into the investment.
All right.
Then we will follow on into Series B, Series C, et cetera. So we go very early.
Do they have to be post revenue, or you'll do something even pre revenue?
No.
Okay.
We are pretty deep tech and science based investors.
All right.
And with real core technology, you have to get in early. You have to really help them, and the ramp to revenue is sometimes a little longer. But so it's different from business models or B2C or applications or more software. We invest in really 3 main areas. One is in what we call health tech, but health tech is so broad. The areas we invest in are devices, therapeutics, and diagnostics, and a few other things. But the things we don't invest in or don't look at too heavily are patient care, healthcare IT. Those are areas that we really don't have expertise in, but we're more in the science-based investing for health tech.
Okay. Yeah. So What are you looking for? Are you looking for early patents? Are you looking for early,
IP? Yes,
yeah.
intellectual property can take many forms. Patents is one lever, which is the most common. But we're looking for technologies that are defendable, that are unique. It's not just an improvement on something else that exists, but something that's really transformative. And most are on the path, especially in health tech, towards patents. The other areas that we invest in include green tech or clean tech, whatever you want to call it, and that encompasses energy, advanced materials, sustainability, things of that nature, and that ranges between aerospace, space technologies, like I said, materials, battery technologies, solar, wind, and water.
Okay, very good. Do most of your deals come to you, or you're hunting most of them? Well, I'm just curious.
It's a mix. Myself and the other 4 partners have immense networks in their careers. We've all had careers of spanning 20 to 15 to 30 years, and with big corporates, with being a founder at startups, being an investor in previous roles, and across the world, really. But most of our networks here in the United States are really the strongest source of deals. They know what we do, they know what we look for. And so a lot does come through those networks, but we also scout. Of course, we're at events, we do research. We have an amazing group of advisors and venture partners that are out there that are very active with us. That source a lot of our deals. And
I saw that list of advisors on your website. So,
yes, they've been amazing. And now what's happened is that now that we've been involved with many companies, we have over 40 portfolio companies. It's the CEOs themselves are now opening up their networks to their colleagues. Yes. So the fantastic CEO of this company, who we respect very highly, has a colleague that's also starting something. So they're leading those folks right to us because of the experience we've had with them.
I just estimate, you don't have to give me exact numbers, but I'm just curious. So in 2021, how many deals do you think you looked at, and how many did you say yes to? I'm just curious.
2021. Well, on an annual basis, we're seeing anywhere between 5,000 to 10,000 deals that come across our desk.
Wow. How do you? I don't even know how you process. I don't know how you process that.
We don't process all of those. Obviously, some are just simply not a fit for what we invest in. So a majority of those go by the wayside, not because they're not good startups or good opportunities, just not fitting within our wheelhouse. The others, we have a weekly call, weekly general deal flow call with all the partners and venture partners and advisors. We go through the ones that we think that we might have some interest in every week. The ones that pass through that call, we will form a due diligence team and then start the process of doing research and working with those entrepreneurs, learning about their businesses, et cetera. And then it's just a funnel that finally comes down to the ones that we really feel that not only are great investment opportunities, but also ones where we can help, where we have not only the expertise to assess, to make sure we're making the right decision, because that's what our investors expect of us, but also ones that we feel that we can bring value to.
What's your average, investment into a company? What, $1 million? 500? Yeah.
We've put a small amounts of $50,000 to $100,000 in, up to $3 million. So it's a full range depending on the stage. But now with the capital we have today, on average, we'll be putting anywhere between 3 to 5 million into
3 to 5 million. And are you looking for a percentage of ownership most of the time? Are you targeting a certain percentage of ownership that you want, certain number of board seats, et cetera?
Right. When we lead a deal, which is probably over half of the deals that we invest in, we do typically have a board seat. From a percent ownership standpoint, we look at it differently. We look at value creation. So it really, to us, we own 1% or 10%. it's not about that. It's about how we're going to turn that $1 into $10.
Okay.
$20.
Okay.
So that's the most important thing. Valuation is the thing that really determines what percentage you're going to take. And as you know, in today's world, valuations can be a little bit out of whack.
I mean, yeah, it's
can be, but in the areas in which we invest, it's less hype and more reality.
okay.
And also we're East Coast. Most of our investments are in the Southeast or New England. We do have some in California, in Silicon Valley, as well as across other places in the United States. But we can sense fairly early if we're competing or bidding on a raising a valuation that doesn't make sense. And
I see.
It's one of the key points we always try to coach early stage entrepreneurs on, is that getting a very large or too large of a valuation at the early stage does not help you, because it puts much more pressure on you for that next round of funding, and you can almost hurt yourself by having too high of a valuation early on.
That's great advice. I haven't heard that one before. Very good advice. Let me ask you this. What, in general, do you pass more often because the product or what doesn't make sense and you're not convinced about the product, or do you pass more often because of the human element, the founders, the people involved? You meet the founders, you meet the co-founders, and you're like, okay, yeah, these guys can't work together. Usually
in the beginning, we haven't had an opportunity to get to know the founders that well. So in the beginning, we assess the technology and the market opportunity. And the key thing that we look at is when you're a science or technology-based investor, the best technology doesn't always win. Technology is important, but if let's say there's an energy efficiency technology for buildings. If you have a technology that the value proposition is such that it saves 10% of the energy bill, that's not transformative. That's not going to change anybody's life. Okay, it's a step up, but it's not really gonna transform anything. Also, just because it's a great, fantastic, interesting technology, we always ask the question, so what? Who cares? Because the solutions out there today, are they good enough? And yes, this could be a technology that is way better, but do the buyers care? Do they need that much of an improvement? Is it really going to save that many more lives? Is it really going to transform things? So we're very cognizant of choosing the technologies that we feel are transformative, are a 0 to 1 proposition, aren't just an improvement of something that's currently out there. And so that's one of the things we look at. The other thing we look at in the industrial sector, specifically when we're looking at materials or clean tech technologies, is the value chain, where they fit within that sector's value chain, and how are they going to enter that market? Is this a direct sales proposition? Are there distributors and partners that they can work through to sell? Are there acquirers of businesses in this area? And those are all things that we look at when we're evaluating a business.
Is the most common reason for failure mismanagement of cash, too slow to the market on something, or the people implode on themselves and the team implodes?
I'd say it's probably equal across the board. The people involved are extremely important, and I did run a Techstars accelerator in the early stages of getting this fund together, and we didn't cover that. But one of the things that Techstars always is very keen on is team, because the people involved are extremely important. And in making that business successful. You can't escape that, and you need that. You can't always predict that. You don't know what's going to happen.
Nope.
You only get to know folks to a certain level. But
That's
we've
right.
been very lucky so far. But the other areas where some startups will fail is, again, going back to how they enter that market and sector. Where do they fit in the value chain? Are they positioning themselves correctly? Meaning, do they need to be the manufacturer of this thing, or can someone else manufacture it and their core competency is doing this? They need to focus on their core competencies and then, make sure they have the resources or third parties or outsource the other components of the business. But they have to have a clear vision of how they enter that market and how they're going to commercialize their technology. And that's very tough, especially when you're talking about new technologies. If there's not an established supply chain, you have to almost put it together yourself. And that's hard. But if you do that well and you execute well, then first of all, it's a big barrier to entry for competition. And once you're in, and it's going to be hard for someone else to catch up. But that's hard. That's one of the areas that a lot of startups will struggle with and will take longer than expected is commercialization.
What is the key thing that you're looking for in the personality or soft skills of a founder when you meet them for dinner and you're dissecting them? And I know you've hired a bunch of people. You've done this a million times. Hell, you used to be a recruiter. When you're sitting across the table from them, what are you looking for from a soft skills perspective?
Someone that listens, someone that isn't defensive, that understands that, look, we want to help. We're here to guide and to help. We don't know everything. We do expect that we will learn a lot from the founders, but we do know a lot about building a business. We know a lot about building a team. We know a lot about commercialization, and we need to have a good feeling that founder is going to surround themselves with other people that can help them, because there's not one founder that can do everything. There's smart, brilliant people, but everybody can't do everything. So we try to assess whether that person is going to be a good listener, a good learner. They're going to be flexible. They're going to know what they don't know, and they're going to be team players and share. They know they have to have a good understanding that they're going to have to give up equity in their business, not only to investors, but also to co-founders and to employees, and have a good sort of collaborative personality. You really you nailed it right there with everything that I've ever seen, especially if you're dealing with a founder that created something or invented something, or, then they, first of all, their egos are already pretty high. Right. And once they create something, then their ego gets even worse. And now they're like, okay, I'm the smartest guy in the room. And most of them just don't listen very well. I would say the majority of early stage founders, especially if they're involved with something where they created or invented a product, it's hard for them to listen. And it's hard for them to give up different functional aspects of the business. Couldn't agree more. I've met with so many of them, and they'll ask me for advice, and I'll just say, yeah, I got one piece of advice for you. Listen more and talk less. Yes, and we've in fact, I had a meeting yesterday with one of our founders who started his business here in South Carolina and now splits his time between Silicon Valley and South Carolina. He has an operation out there. When he started working with Amy, he didn't even know that he needed to set up an entity to be invested in. He's like, oh, I need to set up a company. And so we have nurtured and help this entrepreneur start this company from the very first day of formation with an amazing technology. He's now in meetings with potential acquirers. And this is wonderful. Just a couple years down the road and close to commercialization on one part of the platform. And this is going to be a multi-$100 million exit for him in the short term, because he listened. And and he appreciated the advice and nurturing that we gave him. And he's also a person in an underserved background from the country that he's from and the ethnicities that he's from. A lot of people wouldn't give him the time of day, wouldn't listen to him. We're colorblind. We don't have blinders on, and we saw the opportunity and we really embraced this founder. And wow, I mean, it's going to be one of the more biggest success stories of our fund.
Now, see, right there, your passion really came out. See, so I know you like the numbers. I know you like the business in general, but especially probably as you get older, like the human side of making a difference in somebody's life like
amazing.
that. That part feels really good, doesn't it?
It does. And I have to tell you a little story. When I first felt this was at Supply Base, and we were probably in close to getting acquired. And I was in the lobby of our office, and 3 or 4 of the engineers that we had hired come back from lunch, and they had gotten some takeout, and they walked in, and they were going to go eat lunch in the little kitchen we had. And my co-founder and I looked at each other like, wow, we had created a culture, or we've created a place for a home for these people. And there were about 70 of them. And that made me feel really good that
it does.
Yes. We've created not just a business and equity and all this kind of stuff, but these employees, this is their job.
Yes.
This is where they spend most of their time. And we've created such an amazing culture and atmosphere for them. And that's the most rewarding thing. And I see that now with our portfolio companies too, is as much time I can spend with each of them when they hire people, and you see a team being built, and they're passionate and they're celebrating, and they're having their ups and downs and challenges, but they get through it. It's really rewarding.
It really is. It really is. I think sometimes we forget about this with the current vibe in social media, but really we do care about each other as human beings more than anything, right? Like, I know they always talk about the numbers and the math, but really at the end of the day, we are humans that want to take care of other humans, and that's what our passion is. Yeah, I totally agree. I know we're almost out of time. I got 2 more quick questions for you.
Okay.
You've learned a lot now, right? I mean, you've had, by the way, great career. Congratulations on everything you've accomplished.
Thank you.
Really, I mean, wonderful, wonderful career. Your teenagers don't quite fully understand how well you've done yet, but they will when they get a little older. But if you could call the young man coming out of Clemson, I'm guessing you were like 21 or something, probably. What would you tell him now if you could call that guy based on what you've learned? Anything? Would you say anything to him?
I'd say that, and I would tell this to anybody, that when you make a decision, whether it's a new job or making an investment, you can analyze it forever. You can put a spreadsheet together and try to analyze the risk out of that decision. And it's important to do. But at the end of the day, you have to have a gut feeling that this is the right thing to do, because when you are thinking about doing something and the gut's telling you to do it and you don't do it, you're going to always look back and regret. Darn, what if I wish I would have done that, or I wish I would have tried to do that. If you follow your gut and it doesn't work out, you don't look back to say I shouldn't have done that. You may, but you're not going to have as much remorse. You're going to be like, okay, fine, great. I learned, move on. So I never be in a position where you look back to say I should have done something because I was passionate about it and I didn't do it. Or I waited too long to do it. I should have done it 2 years ago. That's what I would tell myself at 21. Not in my early career, but during certain periods of my career, I should have accelerated what I really ended up doing. I just didn't move fast enough. I didn't just do it. I waited and then waited. And now here I am. I'm like, gosh, I could be 10 years younger than where I am now if I had just accelerated a few of those decisions earlier on.
Great advice. Last question. If you, at this stage in life, at this age, if you could put your core purpose in life into like a sentence, like if you could just define David's core purpose. Let's set aside your wife and children for a minute. Let's put them aside because that's kind of a separate, special core purpose. Beyond your immediate family, how would you describe David's core purpose in life?
That's a hard one.
I know.
I go back to what gives me the most feeling of reward, and that is knowing that I've made an impact in a young person's life or given them some tools to make some really good decisions. And if
Excellent.
I can change the life of other entrepreneurs, I come from a Latino background. If I can encourage or be a role model for other Latino youth that are up and coming, and there's some just fantastic talent here in the United States, that makes my day. That makes it all worth it.
Awesome stuff, David. I really appreciate you sharing and telling us about your story on the Riderflex podcast. Thank you.
Thank you. I've enjoyed it.